Drones. Something that I'm usually complaining about in film music. But I went to see the Michael Mann movie Thief from 1981. It was playing at a repertory theater in my neighborhood. And Tangerine Dream does the score for Thief, all synth. And I honestly, I love a lot of synth scores, especially from the 80s. And Tangerine Dream just never caught my attention so much. But after watching Thief, I was just so excited. Like, that score, I mean, I think a part of it is that the way that Michael Mann makes movies, he gives so much space for the score. I mean, I think, what is it, like the first 10 minutes of the movie is James Caan drilling into a safe, and there's no dialogue. There's hardly even sound effects because the score is just raging loud, especially in the theater. And, there's like sparks flying everywhere, and it's just this cool like wall of sound that's just infiltrating all of the movie. And I wanted to like fool around with this stuff because it's really basic. I mean, it's like classic drone music that generally doesn't excite me because it's everywhere in film music these days. I mean, there's just the one-note composer, right? I mean, there's all these software companies available that I use. Heaviosity I use quite a bit, and makes amazing textures, ambient textures and drones that evolve and sound great. And when you put it against picture, it just really works. And there's a reason why so many filmmakers want this stuff. It just works great. But I do feel, like something is being taken away from me as a composer because, I mean, if AI is going to jump in anywhere, it's going to be that kind of ambient drone stuff. Because it is just a one note, often type of composing. But listening to the Tangerine Dream score, it's just like I wanted to play with like building my own analog sounds, just using analog synths and finding a way to actually be able to react with the developing sounds and, apply like my own creative touch in real time. So just to explain my setup here right now, I have this sound here. I'll talk about the sequence a little bit later that you hear at the beginning of the piece. But I want to talk about this sound first. This. Okay, so the first thing is, well, that sound is just coming from one synth. It's this Ise Nin here, and that made by Black Corporation. It's a recreation of a Jupiter 8, and not like, I don't need to go into the details of how I program this sound. It's got sawtooth. Maybe I think there is a square wave in there too. It's just got a layer of synth sounds. But the first thing I want to talk about is the pedal. I'm using this UA delay pedal, the Starlight Echo Station, and it has modeled old school delay units. And the one I have it on right now is the Echoplex, which is a tape delay from, I think, the late 70s, early 80s. And, so it's using tape. This tape is recording the sound and then looping it. But what's exciting about this setting that I'm using, well, there's a couple of things here. First of all, most importantly is right here, you see this knob that setting has two different delay lengths for each stereo channels. So there's one delay on the left and one delay on the right that are repeating at different times. And so it's basically, I mean, if you set this up back in Tangerine Dreams time, you would have to have two Echoplex tape machines, each of them at a different setting, one for each channel. But what's so cool about this is it just creates this kind of chaotic sound that, like, all I'm getting for this main sound, all I'm using is the one Ise Nin synth and mono out into just this pedal. There's nothing else. And, you know, so you get this. You know, you get a sound on each channel. Kind of flickering away. And right now I have the feedback down, but when I was recording the song, I had it up here, so it'll just keep going. And then over here, they have ABC, so this is 3 different units, tape units that they modeled. And they go from like cleanest and in the best condition, A, on down to C, which is like something that, you know, just has super old tape. The whole thing is kind of broken down and barely working. And then you can emphasize that even more with this mod. So I have this mod wheel all the way over here at 3 o'clock. So it's really giving this crunchy, old, broken down tape sound, emphasizing like all that old school analogness of it. So you can hear it, it's just going to repeat. And you're just going to get this sound on sound now with the feedback knob up. And that old tape sound is it just has all these artifacts and tape noise. And it's just creating this kind of swirling noise bed that adds so much interest to the texture, especially with the left-right stereo. So you just have a lot of textures happening from one note. Then the controller I'm using here is an MPE controller. This is the Osmose. And and you need a synth that'll respond to MPE, which the Black Corporation Ise Nin does. So what that means is that with every key I have independent control. So I was doing these pitch bends, for example, with a couple octaves above. And on like a classic synth, when you use the pitch bend wheel, it bends all the notes, whatever notes you have down, it'll bend everything together. But here I can hold down this pedal and it'll stay, and then I can pitch bend other notes against it. So that's one kind of expressive feature that I'm using here. And then this keyboard and the synth together, I can use aftertouch. So as I travel further down the key press, it opens up the filter more and more. And I can do that independent for each key. So together with the pedal, it's creating, and right now I have let me set the pedal back to where it was. So with the pedal doing all these delays, I can get these really interesting textural sounds that sound like a lot more is going on than just one synth and one delay effect, or in this case 2 delay effects, one on each, on the left and on the right. So, and now, yeah, it's just that sound is just gonna repeat infinitely. So the way the kind of the melody and the chord progression that I use here. I'm going to, we're in D flat, and I go to the major third. It was the first, after I did those pitch bends, which was just unison with the pitch bend, or 2 octaves above. So then I went to the major third. Which I feel like is always a surprise with this type of music. Let me turn that off. Always a surprise because it's so tempting to go to the minor when you're kind of creating these moody atmospheric textures. But a lot of these movies, especially from the 80s, they have major. I mean, Blade Runner has a lot of major tonality in it. Stranger Things, the opening credits, that's a major 7 chord. And it, it's like when you're storytelling, are you doing a villain or are you doing a hero? So, this is going to give you more of a heroic flavor with the major. And then I will go up to the 4. And then I add a little from the minor scale, the flat 6, for, a little bit of mystery. And then resolving to the 5. And then I just take those same notes and I turn them into chords. So I go to the flat 6. To the 4 chord. To the 1. And one of the reasons why I chose those chords, apart from like just kind of the film-like sound of that progression, is I have this pedal down here. I'm holding the D flat, and all 3 of those chords have a D flat in them. So when I'm doing the chording, I'm just adding 2 notes, the other 2 notes besides D flat. So we have the flat 6, which has that D flat in it, the 4 chord, and the 1. Okay, so for the sequence at the beginning, well, it's playing throughout, but it's the only thing going at the beginning. I'm using the MPC Live here to send MIDI. So I made the sequence in MPC Live, and then I'm sending the MIDI out to the ARP Odyssey here. There's actually I have 2 MIDI outs, so you can see them kind of coming out of the back, and one's going to another synth. So I have sort of 2 sequences. They're very similar. One of them, the most basic one, is going to a bass sound. And then the ARP here has this kind of brighter sound. You can hear it. So that brighter sound, you're hearing these little almost like drum rolls, right? So the bass sound is just going dum dum dim dum dum dim dum dim dum dum dim, but the brighter sound adds little brap 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 things to it. So it's like you're injecting the steps of the sequence occasionally with a note repeat. And this is something that Tangerine Dream used quite a bit actually in their writing. But it is in that first opening cue in Thief. And it's referred to as ratcheting. And you can really get lost on YouTube learning about how to do a ratcheting sequence, because Tangerine Dream had to do it with modular synthesizers. And modular is just such a cottage industry these days, and there's a million videos out there showing how people set it up on their modular systems. And I honestly could never figure out what they were talking about. It seems quite complicated. But the Akai MPC software actually has a feature built in now called ratcheting. So here's my MIDI sequence, but if you go here to this little disclosure window, and then right now we're looking at the velocity for each note, but I can change this to ratchet. And you can see here, if we zoom out, this is the whole sequence. And at little points here, I've just drawn in ratchet. And the smaller bar, the lower bar is going to, I think that's like a double hit, and then the longer bars are 4 hits. So you're getting this this kind of rolling sound, and I've made it non-repeating, so you're never quite sure when they're going to happen. So it just kind of adds another layer of interest to this otherwise super simple kind of static sound. So you hear those little rolls. Now, if I can move this without really messing things up. Very cramped here. All right, so over here, I can also create interest by, closing the filter. That's an easy one. It's mostly all I was doing is opening and closing the filter here. So if I turn it all the way down, now you just hear the bass. And there's no drum rolls on that, no note repeats. It's just on this top layer. And then I can play with the decay, make it more like a drum sound. And that's just going into a reverb. There's nothing else. So that's that sound. Anyway, I've made a library of this type of music inspired by Tangerine Dream. If you're a filmmaker, you can go to my website. It's in the description, and get that music. Or if you're a musician and you want to use it to make your own art, you can find it there too. Thanks for watching.